the sneaky way to burn out is not necessarily overtraining, but just being all consumed. And there's a fine line between like having that be all consuming, but also like encouraging that passion and excitement.
Okay, let's move on to Big O's question. That's literally what their name is. Big O, when to prioritize weight loss over power gains? Despite Drew's diet tribe, fat is not...
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that is either. Currently at 4 watts per kilo FTP at 97 kilos. That's awesome. I lost 10 plus pounds in the off/base/gym season, but plateaued since then. I need to fuel/recover to train and race. How do I balance weight loss with training? Wait for the off season, tough out the deficit now. Your boy is hungry. He's crit focused, but needs to climb for local races. Thanks, Big O. So like kind of the balance of like, when to focus on weight loss versus when to focus more on your training and power improvements.
Also, a diatribe is like a
kind
of like a cynical view of something.
Oh,
yeah. A bitter, angry, or severe speech or piece of writing that strongly criticizes a group or idea. Got it.
We moved past that.
He listens to the Bonk Bros. Thanks for listening to all of our podcasts. He's a double dipper. All right.
Yep. So what are you guys' thoughts on this?
This is a tough one. I mean, he says at the end here, crit focus, but need to climb for local races. So,
your boy is hungry.
You can speak to this, Drew, but I mean, crit focus is really just raw power.
Being thinner for crit racing is not going to help you unless you're doing an uphill crit, and there's only like 3 in the country. And those were the 3 that I always targeted. So like when I was a crit racer, I actually actively tried gaining weight and just like couldn't do it. Like maybe I gained a few pounds, but not enough to make a substantial difference in my crit performance. Not when you're putting me, like if you put me and Justin Williams side by side, it's just different body types. And there was, not much I could do.
I mean, and Big O's FTP here is 388. Like that's some watts.
Yeah, but he's 97K. Is that right? 97 kilograms. So I mean, he's like, is that 210?
Yeah, 215 or so. Yep.
Yeah, he's a big dude. I mean, like, sounds like he's in the right discipline. It sounds like if he's gonna race, crit racing is where he should be. If you're that body type. Yeah.
So, but I mean, to go on the conversation of balancing, you're focused on weight loss versus, maximizing your training. I do think that it's very hard to try and balance those simultaneously. I think there's a part of the season where weight loss can and should be in this case here. If weight loss is one of your goals, there's a point in the season where I do think you have to sacrifice your quality of your training in order to focus on the weight loss aspect. But I don't think it's good to do that year round. I think you have to be cyclical with how you're approaching that as well, because your body being in a constant state of deficit. One, that's going to have a huge effect on just your overall metabolism. But 2, like that's going to be like, that's chronically very fatiguing on your body to be training at a high level and in a constant state of caloric deficit. And in order, I mean, the math always maths. In order to lose weight, you have to be outputting more than you're inputting, so that in order for that equation to work out, you have to be in a caloric deficit. And that is going to fluctuate though. If you're constantly in a caloric deficit, your metabolism eventually is going to start to equalize. So you have to actually like be consuming less or outputting more at some point, because your body is constantly just trying to chase, it's using that metabolism to try and chase like whatever that output ratio or input to output ratio is. So I do think there's periods where it's good to come, to take the focus off of that and just kind of focus your emphasis on training. And that's probably going to be more during like the high quality part of the season. So I think, race season or peak season, or even maybe your build season as you're preparing for peak racing. But unless you're doing an event that's very specific where you have to cut weight for that event, or you desire to, I guess, maybe not have to, but you want to. I think that the weight loss aspect should probably be more conserved for the base season, off season, early build season, and so on.
I think if you really want to, there's a way to do it. There's this really great podcast out by Matt Fox. It's like a short 15-minute episode on his Sweat Elite podcast. So he's a running coach, and he really breaks down carb cycling and that's implications in season, cycling, fueling, really adequately fueling your workouts and still trying to lose weight and how to do that. Sustainably. And I think nutrition and weight loss is far more individualized than we think. Like I think the body is too smart to just have this consistent deficit and continue to lose weight. So he says, I don't know if he was doing that by tracking and just trying to hit like a consistent deficit in the off season, if that's how he lost the weight, but now he's plateaued, and that's not surprising. But I don't think the next step is just to have a bigger deficit. I think that's exactly what you don't want to do in season, because you're not going to be recovering adequately. You're not going to be fueling adequately. So yeah, maybe look into how to approach things differently with that carb cycling if it is really important to continue to shed some weight in the season.
I think of like weight loss in two different buckets of like, you've got weight loss in which you lose weight and you want to get to a weight that is healthier for you and it's going to stay there, and then I think of like these high performers. Like I remember hearing, I don't know if it was Keegan or Sophia, but they were talking about Keegan last year losing weight for marathon mountain bike world championships. And it was like he was losing weight, but he wasn't going to stay there. He was just getting lean for that race and then going back to like his normal racing weight. And so, and I think it was Sophia in an interview talking about like he was hungry and he was cranky for the few weeks leading up to that race because he was really trying to get lean for that race. And it paid off. Like he's the mountain bike world champion right now for marathon. So like, obviously it worked for him. And so I think there's kind of like, you have to think of it as two different ways of like, am I trying to get to a weight, just a healthier overall weight that's going to be my new normal weight? Or you're trying to lose weight for a specific event like Leadville in a week, and then after that really specific event, I'm going to go back to a more sustainable approach like Caitlin was talking about. And I think how you approach those two different things those two things are different. If you're just trying to get to a body weight that you're going to sustain long term, I think doing that in the off season is more, because you can actually bite off more in the off season when your goals are less on performance. So like what Adam was saying, like you could hit a much bigger deficit in the off season, because if your performance tanks then, like that's not really the goal. And so you can hit a bigger deficit and lose 10 pounds like he said he did in the off season. But doing that in the middle of the season is not going to go well. I mean, if you're going to try to, and then so that's when I think of the other bucket of like, I'm going to get lean for an event. Like that's when you have to be really strategic. And I think that was what Caitlin was talking about, is like, you have to be really strategic about how you do that mid-season, because if you are overly aggressive with the weight loss, performance is going to go down. And so like that's been something that this is going to sound crazy, and all the people who listen to that Bunkers episode are probably going to kill me for saying this, but I've never ever tried to lose weight. I've just had like a good I guess metabolism training, whatever. And for the first time in my life, I'm like trying to lose weight for Leadville, and it is harder than it seems, and but it is doable as long as you like are really smart about how you do it and strategic. I think one of the things that
you're doing the harder of the two, like you had just talked about, like everybody has a set point. Like if you're at a healthy weight and you try to get down to your racing weight and it's just not sustainable, and you find that like you just kind of creep back up a few pounds to that healthy set point. It is, if you're trying to lose weight to shift that set point a few pounds and you do that over a long period of time, like that's not that hard. But to go from that set point to that racing weight, that can be hard.
Yeah.
Especially balancing that with high performance training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. You have to be really strategic about it. Like, I think one of the things you said, Adam, was a constant deficit. And I think that's where strategy comes into place.
Yeah.
Like, for me, I'm not at a constant deficit. I'm only hitting a deficit on very specific days. And those are the days usually on, like endurance ride days or recovery days. Like the days that I'm doing work, like intensity or an interval, like I'm not those days aren't deficits because I really need to fuel those rides to maintain the performance. And it's like such a slow process too of like, yeah, I'm not cutting a lot of weight and I'm doing it ever so slightly.
Sure.
Like the trend has just barely been going down,
Yeah, and that's why you have to be super methodical when you're taking that approach. If you're just kind of saying, "Yeah, I'm trying to lose weight right now," and you're quote unquote doing what you're doing, where you're like, "Yeah, I'm having, some days in the red and then some days that I'm just like, yeah, whatever." You'll be surprised to find out that like your body's in some kind of homeostatic state where it just wants to stay there. So like, yeah, you might have a couple days in the red, but then that day in the black is going to probably equalize. It's like if you're trying to, especially if you're trying to balance performance training with any kind of weight loss regimen, you've got to be pretty strict with tracking it. Otherwise, it's just you're going to be chasing your tail. And that can be very challenging and frustrating for people to go through. I've seen it happen. I've even experienced that. Where it's like, if I'm not tracking it, I feel like I'm, not gaining, like working towards my desired body composition. But then before I know it, like 2 weeks later, I'm like exactly where I was, at the start of it. So then it's like, okay, I got to actually track this.
I do want to say something about the whole diatribe thing. I think I got a really bad rep from that 10-minute segment on Bonk Bros. And this isn't my way of trying to like mediate that, but I think my biggest frustration with that whole Bonk Bros segment was like lazy people. I don't like maybe I was like too hard on the whole like going down that road, but like if you're actively trying to be healthy and lose weight, and you're obviously if you're listening to this podcast, you're a cyclist, and so like it just irks me when people are like not doing anything to change or get healthy. And so I feel like I don't know. Maybe it's like more so the laziness part of it instead of the fat part of it. But like, yeah, I commended it. I mean, what I want to say to all of that is like, if you are trying to get healthier or lose weight, like good for you. I'm pumped for you. And like, obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, if you're racing bikes, if you're riding bikes, if you're training, if you're running, if you're counting your calories, obviously there's effort there. And I want to encourage anybody who's on that path or on that journey of trying to lose weight, like you're doing something about it and you're like taking the bull by the horns. And so this is my way of saying good job and keep at it. It might be hard, but it's certainly worth it if being healthier is the outcome.
I think that just speaks to your personality and as why you are a coach. You want to see people have goals and reach those goals and have their talk or their actions match their talk, and that's understandable.
For sure. Yeah. So I mean, one more thing that I would say here to Big O before we wrap up here, I would, you're already at a pretty high state of performance. 4 watts per kilo for most people is like, that is the pinnacle. And first off, like hats off. That is awesome to get to that point. So what I would say too is like, it is important to figure out to establish what your goals are. Put down what your goal is, whether that is a performance goal in terms of like, hey, I want to get to 4.5 watts per kilo, or hey, you know what, I want to improve my body composition and get down to whatever it is, 95 kilos. Like, figure out what that goal is. But then I think like it's important to keep track of where your performance is at too, because what can really happen with when people start to chase the weight loss aspect of that equation is performance can tank severely. And I actually have seen this happen with some of my athletes as well, where we kind of got too focused on the one side of the equation versus the other. And that can lead to all kinds of metabolic issues as well. When you get too hyper-focused on the weight loss aspect while trying to balance the training. So I would just say like, you've got a really good fitness level. So you've got a good place where you can kind of track how your performance overall is fluctuating through that that body composition optimization. And if you start to see that really drop for whatever reason, then maybe you're getting maybe you need to just dial back the training even. There may be periods where it's like, hey, you know what? I have to just dial back the performance aspect of the training if I am going to focus on this weight loss. Because it especially, you're a crit focused athlete, which means you're probably doing a lot of HIIT and anaerobic work. And that's going to be some of the hardest to do in balance while being in that caloric deficit. And that's where, Caitlin's talking about different things like carb cycling in order to help kind of offset that. But what I would say is like, you're at a great state in terms of your overall fitness balance. And this is going to be my plug. I think this warrants Big O. I think you should be working with some kind of nutritionist here. We've given you some advice of how to balance the training, but Drew diving into his body comp optimization journey right now, he's doing that in tandem with working with a nutritionist, which I think is the right approach, because that's how you can truly help kind of maximize both ends of the needle there. So that'd be my last recommendation is like, you're in a great place already. If you're trying to further optimize that, I think taking that next step of working with some kind of nutrition coach is going to be highly beneficial.
And the one I recommend, who I work with, is Alex Winicky at Second Arrow Nutrition. You can find all of his info through the Ignition website. And if you sign up through the Ignition website or mention Ignition, he'll hook you up with a discount as well, since we're like referring you to him from Ignition. The other thing that I was going to mention to Big O, if I were coaching Big O and he brought this up on like a coaching call, I feel like the first thing that I'd have him do is figure out where his body fat percentage is and see, because he is a crit racer and he is a big boy. And so like knowing what that lean body mass is and saying like, okay, because he may not want to lose weight, but he may want to actually like lose some fat and gain some muscle. And so
Sure.
Figuring out like what that lean body mass percent and your lean mass and then your body fat percent is, I think would be a helpful approach to it as well. That may not even mean losing weight, but it may mean like gaining some muscle in the process, right, which would only be helpful for crit racing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Also, if you're given a recommendation for a nutritionist, I would start there, because you could say I have a diet tribe against nutritionists and dietitians. I think they're just like there are good doctors and bad doctors, good coaches and bad coaches. There's the same with nutritionists, and some nutritionists truly do believe that it is purely a deficit. And if you've reached a plateau, then next thing to do is just kind of up that deficit. And you want to work with somebody who's very up to date on performance and nutrition and how to, how your body as an individual is responding to weight loss. And
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think someone that's very well versed in, sports performance makes the most sense. Okay, cool. Well, good luck with it, Big O. As always, like, we'd love to hear any updates from anyone that submits questions as well. So we'd love to hear how the rest of your crit season goes and come back maybe in the off season and let us know how things progressed for you. Okay, one more episode here, or one more question here for this episode. We're going to do a question from Jordan. He's talking about coaching advice from coaches. So Jordan says, "Hi, Matchbox crew. This fall, I'm going to be an assistant coach for the high school cross-country team that 3 of my sons are on. I'm a cyclist who also enjoys running, but I don't have any coaching experience. Can each of you take some time to share some favorite lessons that you've learned and advice from your coaching careers? Any relevant books or resources that you recommend also? Thanks, Jordan."
Matt Fitzgerald, dude. You can't read it.
I knew you were going to go there.
You can't read enough Matt Fitzgerald, I'm telling you. But at the top of the list, especially if you're coaching a cross-country running team, is the 80-20 running book. I mean, that book is like literally, and I feel like that's where a lot of high school teams probably don't get it right, is like they don't follow an 80-20 plan. Like most high school kids are going to run their brains out every time they run. And they need to realize that that's not the best way to train. And so if you can implement some of those 80-20 training practices with that team, you're going to see some much better performance improvements from that. I think that would be the top of the list that I would say.
I'd say coaching high schools is special. It's 50% understanding the physiology and actually the actual coaching. And then it's 50% like creating team culture. Because when you look at your high school sports or your high school coaches, what you remember is really like the team culture that they formed, what they were about. And with high school, especially, you're going to have potentially 15-year-olds and 18-year-olds, which are in very different phases of life. And with that can come very different levels of performance. So trying to bridge that gap, trying to have the older ones be mentors toward the younger ones. So even though they're on different performance levels, creating that cohesive team environment, finding ways to do that creatively is really important.
Yeah.
I feel like in high school is like when people become either when I think of like people who either become lifelong athletes or they end at the end of high school. And I think if I were a high school coach, I would want to somehow um like I would want most of the kids on that team to leave high school thinking or to be a lifelong athlete or a lifelong person who stays healthy and exercises. Like I think of sports like football where they end their high school career and if they don't go to college to play, they literally stop exercising at the end of their high school career because they stop playing football. Whereas running is like a great opportunity is like these kids could run for the rest of their life and if they are just like committed to that if they just like running and do that for the rest of their life and that helps them to stay healthy, like that would, I think, be one of the big things that I would try to have as like a takeaway. Like, yeah, it'd be cool to have one of the kids go to the Olympics or whatever, but I think more cool would be having all of them live a healthy lifestyle after they graduate high school,
For
which
sure.
Have
I think would be really cool.
yeah, longevity in the sport and just have a love for it that started there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'll plug another Matt Fitzgerald book. I really enjoyed How Bad Do You Want It? Which is more of like a mindset and kind of like psychological approach to training and racing. And I just think there's a lot of good principles in there that carry on out beyond, would be cross country racing for these athletes of just like, putting your mind to something, not letting your mind be the barrier, but letting your mind kind of be the thing that breaks you through those barriers, especially when the races get hard or the training gets hard, or you go through periods of the season that are hard. I think being able to like kind of teach your athletes that you can use your mind as your biggest asset, because a lot of times, especially with younger athletes, psychologically that can be the hardest part for them. Physically they can perform great, they can recover well, they can respond super fast. But a lot of times it's the psychological aspect that gets really challenging for athletes. They're balancing so many other aspects of life with social life and schoolwork and home life and athletic life. And there's so much going on that sometimes that mental aspect can be underserved. So I like that book, and I think there's some great principles within there as well.
I have two more things. One is big picture, and then one is more specific. But the big picture was I was a part of a local junior team in Louisville called Revo Devo, and I really liked. They had these I forget what you called them, but like at the end of each practice, they would have a character trait that they would say like, we're the kind. I forget exactly how they did it, but there was like it was like a building list of like these are the types of character traits we want to instill upon the athletes we're coaching. And I remember one of them was like, I'm gonna congratulate the person who finishes ahead of me and behind me. And that was one of the character traits. And another one was I'm gonna say thank you to one volunteer or course marshal at the next race, or I'm not going to make excuses. Like just these really good character traits that really like apply to sport, but also carry outward to like your whole life.
For sure.
So I think maybe having like developing not just obviously their like running and their physical, but also like pouring into them to be just better characters, I think would be good. And that's like big picture. And then to go really specific, I would go, this is maybe, I don't know how specific advice this guy wants, but I've ran with my local high school cross country team. And the one thing I took away was like high school kids like to run hard all the time. Like I remember this kid showing up to intervals one day and I did the track workout with them. And normally this kid would blow me out of the water. And on that day I was able to like stay with them, which meant something was wrong. And I'm like, dude, what, like, I can stay with you on this workout. Like, what's wrong with you? And he said, man, I don't know. I felt so good on my run yesterday. I had an easy run and I ran like 5:30s and I'm like, dude, like that wasn't an easy run. Like, yeah, you felt great, but you did your intervals yesterday. And then you come to practice today thinking that you can do another set of intervals. And he just had this misconception of intensity. And so I think I would go to your school or whatever, if you've got a budget, and get heart rate straps for all of your runners and make them wear them. That's what I would do if I were a cross country coach, and make them wear them, especially on the runs where they're not under your supervision. Like if they're like this kid was, supposed to do an easy run at home, like let them take the heart rate monitor home and tell them, look, on your easy runs, don't go over this heart rate. And while they're running, that's just going to make sure they don't overtrain is the main thing the heart rate straps are going to do. And then when they're there doing track workouts, then they can go based off of their times and stuff like that. But
yeah, I mean, and I think you could do the same even if you didn't have access to the heart rate monitors. You could do the same, especially with running. Like it's so much easier to track based on pace.
Yeah, that's true.
Obviously, the terrain dictates some of that, but for the most part, running with off of pace is a great way to establish good training. Good training zones. So I think that'd be a fine way to do it as well. But I agree. I mean, and that's just part of that is because for a kid, like going hard is fun. It's like, and I think that's part of coaching and training kids too, is like sometimes you gotta just do what's fun, even if it's not the best thing, the best workout for them in that moment. Sometimes you gotta just make some fun into the workout and find different ways, make some challenges or, inter squad competition, do a silly kind of workout, like mix it up to where it's like, there's something fun in there too, because, the season can be really long. And I think what you see a lot of times with high school athletes is the burnout effect, to where it's like, instead of them being at their peak for states, they're just like, I just can't wait for states to be over with. Like, I just want to get done with it. Like I'm mentally burnt out, so like, trying to just create that longevity throughout the season and then hopefully beyond, like Drew, you're talking about before. And I think, Drew, what I loved when you're talking about the character building, and having some of those, little, I don't know what you would call
they
them.
were called champion verses. Yeah. That's
Okay, champion.
champion verses.
I think that ties into, Caitlin, what you were talking about with like establishing culture within the team too. Of like, hey, we're going to be a team that champions character. Like, yeah, it's great to like have champions in terms of performance, but at the end of the day, like we want champions of character. And I think the more you can get your athletes to like buy into that culture, and rally around each other through that, some like that, a lot of times that takes a lot of the pressure off of the performance too. And that can be another great way to help instill longevity through the season, but then also beyond the season as well.
Another thing, I remember we had a really good high school track team, and I remember one thing that our coach did like regularly was, instead of just kind of making it up on the spot or every week looked different, every week was the same, and not in terms of like the exact same workout, but every Wednesday was workout Wednesday on the track. Every Thursday we did easy run, and we were in the weight room for plyos, and we had this extensive plyo routine, and that was the same every week. And I don't know if you could practice on weekends, but we got together on Sundays for a long run. And like just those 3 consistent days, I'm sure the other days were similar. I just can't remember exactly what they were. Just like that was my first taste of like routine consistency in training and the ability to see progress week after week.
Sure.
So, if you look back and every week was different and, your coach just seemed to like make it up on the spot, it doesn't feel as legitimate. And that shows in performance too.
Yeah. And we've all been there where it's like, you show up and you find out on the spot, like, hey, we're doing, we're going to do, 12 by 100s today. And everyone's like, not that today. And like, no one wants to do it. And, it's like, you're not going to get the best out of those kids when you're just throwing something at them willy nilly like that. So I totally agree with that, Caitlin. I think, and part of your, I don't want to call it a job, but part of, the responsibility of coaching athletes too is to help set them up for success at the next stage of their life as well, which is, for many going to be going on to some kind of, college career probably, or maybe something, trade school or something like that afterwards. And part of that is like learning how to schedule and make a routine and following that schedule and building in, work-life balance and good time management too. So, I think that the more orchestrated that training can be, the easier it is for them to pick up on those aspects of time management. Whereas, like, yeah, if you just show up and it's all of a sudden out of nowhere you're doing intervals, it's like, there's no routine to follow there. It's like very hard for them to understand and grasp the concept of time management and routine building.
I don't know how long we want to take this, but this is a great question and I could talk about this for a long time. But another thing I want to throw out there is a cross-country coach can have a difficult job just because some sports are going to make their athletes run cross-country as conditioning, and some of those kids don't want to be there.
Sure.
And then some kids, this is their thing. Like, they look forward to their cross-country season. So yeah, again, just like trying to create that team culture. But really communicating with the parents of like, that's a really important piece too. Especially for those kids that like, this is their thing. They love it. They want to run in college. And I've seen it before. Like, there's, the sneaky way to burn out is not necessarily overtraining, but just being all consumed with running. And talking to the parents and getting a feel for just like how the kids are doing mentally, I think is super important. Yeah, because unembarrassingly, I will say I'm a coach today probably because of how much I loved the training and the physiology in high school running. Like, had that obsessive personality where like I thought about it all the time. Like, I loved it. And there's a fine line between like having that be all consuming, but also like encouraging that passion and excitement, because it could turn out that this kid ends up going to college for exercise science and, becoming a coach. But yeah, just handling both sides, going back to big picture, handling those kids.
If that goes too far in one direction, it could also lead to them like exiting sport altogether and not wanting to do any kind of endurance sports for the rest of their life. So I think that's a really good point.
I mean, overtraining, injuries, yeah, keeping an eye on your female athletes, making sure nutrition wise things are good too. That's unfortunately a heavy prominence in running,
for sure,
running. So
yep, and not just on the female side. I think that's kind of unanimously across both sides.
And how cool that 3 of his sons are on the team.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, what a good
that's awesome.
Dude, that's gonna be such a good experience. Hopefully, like, your kids are gonna love it. Hopefully you love it. Yeah, that's cool.
Cool. All right, well, let's wrap it up there. Good luck, Jordan, with the high school season to you and all of your athletes. And we will catch you guys next week.